everyone, my name is Chrissy and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a book review of Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. For those of you who don't know who Trevor Noah is, he is a world-renowned comedian and he is the host of The Daily Show. He was the successor of Jon Stewart. His book is an autobiography of his time in South Africa from when he's born until adulthood when his career starts taking off. Though it's not an extensive look at his life, it's told in snippets and stories that's peppered throughout his young childhood to adult life. The reason why it's called Born a Crime is because Trevor Noah was born to a black mother and a white father in apartheid times in South Africa, which means that races could not intermix with one another and that was illegal. People went to jail for it. Though, as Trevor Noah points out, that those who were white tended to get off with a lot of leeway with like kind of a slap of the wrist of don't you do that, whereas those who are black were, really treated not very well. They're imprisoned, given heavy fines, and just not, there was no equality during that time period. As for this book, if you like Trevor Noah's comedy, then you'll like his writing style. It's very, very similar and very close. The only difference I really found is that he does go into far more detail in his book than in his comedy routine. But one style choice that he does tend to make in both his comedy routines and in this book is that he'll start off a story in one direction, he'll kind of divert in the middle, still keeping with that theme of the first story, and then round it off with connecting it to that first story. This is done with a lot of comedians, but he does do this with almost every chapter as far as I can remember. I am a big fan of that, so it works out. The topics of this book range from times when his mom had to pretend he was not her child, to young love that is pretty hilariously told, to the abuse that he, suffered at the hands of his stepfather. So there is a wide range of things he talks about. A lot of it is kept in a very lighthearted tone, even when he's talking about some very serious subject matter. But some of it is rather heartbreaking too. He does do a very good job of keeping a wide range of emotions throughout his work. The main theme that is throughout this book is his relationship with his mom. It's a very complex relationship, but there's a lot of love that Trevor puts into his writing and into the stories about his mom, which I was very, very appreciative of throughout this. That, you can look at someone who you love and the relationship that you have and still point out that it's complicated. There's things that his mom did during those times which, when you look back on it, be like, should they have done this thing? But at the same time, Trevor points out why those things happened and, how his mom was going against tremendous odds against her and she kept rising up above those things. And I really appreciated that look at her as a whole person instead of just a, flat character of his life. And that's really weird to say because it's not a character, like she's a real person in his life. She raised him and that's his mom. But I do appreciate that it wasn't this two-dimensional look at his mother, but rather looking at her as a whole person of the time and place, and the people that she was with and the things that she did and kind of, everything going around, how that molded her and shaped her as a person and, how that formed their relationship going forward and, the lessons that he learned from her ultimately. This brings me to one thing that Trevor Noah does extremely well is he puts things into context of time, place, and period, and why things are the way they are. A good example, the best example I actually have is from his stand-up comedy, when he talks about Zambia and how he went to a mall and saw escalators. I'm actually going to link a clip of that down in the description, so if you want to take a look at that, you can. But he puts into context so well of why people in Zambia at the time that he was visiting were so enamored by an escalator in a mall and why they were so amazed that this was happening. He puts that into context so phenomenally, and he does that in his written work as well, such as why some people are named after like horrendous dictators and why it is that certain parts of, South Africa, have different kind of cultural views, or rather different feels than others, and why it is, that the relationship with his father happened in a very specific way. So I think those kind of explanations really help the reader get to know, these things, there's thought to them, and that there's reasons why. They may not be the greatest reasons in the world, but they don't come just willy-nilly out of nowhere. As far as the writing itself, it flows really well. Trevor Noah is very gifted at telling a story. And each chapter is pretty much its own story in itself. Like, you can read chapters out of order, and it's not gonna confuse you, or at least I don't believe it will. There are some things he mentions from other chapters, but I think that you can read the chapters pretty independently of one another and still get the main gist of what he's talking about and the main takeaway from that chapter. I will say the only thing that I kind of wished happened in this book is a little bit more follow through with some of the people he mentions in stories. Like, he talks about a childhood friend who had gotten arrested when both of them were stealing something, and then I really wanted to know what happened to that childhood friend, but it didn't tell you in the book. I actually had to watch a clip of it online so that he could say what happened to this person, and I understand why that didn't happen. I think it probably would have clunked up the book a little bit with all these explanations of what happened to everyone. So I do understand why that didn't happen, and it probably did make for a very cleaner version of all the stories that he told. But it's just something that I personally like when it's done in these kind of autobiographies or nonfiction works. Even if it was just, a footnote, that would have been cool. Overall, I really enjoyed this piece. I thought it was really well done. I said, though, I'm a big fan of Trevor Noah, so I don't know if that had a bias in me before I started reading this. By all means, I would love to know if you've read this book, what you thought of it. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button. If you like seeing my face talk about books, hit that subscribe button. And as always and forever, may you get lost in a book.